a year gardening. And there's quite a few things I'm going to be taking you through today. I'm going to be cutting back the long hedgerow that runs at the bottom of the garden, trying to bring that into control. I'm going to take a little visit to the seaside and show you the garden that I mentioned a couple of months ago. I'm going to be doing the new extension to the woodland border, joining those two borders together, and some general maintenance for this time of year. So quite a lot to get through today. We start with the cutting back of that hedge. Well, the birds have flown from the hedge and it's time to bring it back down. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to really reduce the height. And a friend of mine has very kindly lent me a very decent cutter so that I can cut through and bring this down to the level that I really need it to do. So that's the next thing I'm going to do now. Well, this is taking some time, but we are taking this hedge right the way down. Now, you remember last year I said I wanted to bring it down so we were 2 meters down the flagpole. Well, this is 2 meters down. So I've started to cut it back, and it's going to take me probably a couple of weeks to get this sorted out. I'm totally pooped now. Really exhausted, but hey, it's coming on, and that's what we want. Autumn, preparation for next year, always good, always fun. So we'll get this cleared down over the next couple of weeks now. Well, today you find me in the beautiful seaside town of Hastings in Sussex, and I'm down on the beach, and behind me you can see the newly restored pier. But I'm here for a specific reason, and that's to visit a little garden. And I had intended to speak to 2 people today to discuss this garden, but unfortunately Ali is on holiday, and Bill, the chap who's been looking after this lovely garden, sadly passed away last week, so I can't see either of those. But I'm going to go and take some still photographs and explain a little bit about the garden and where the garden is going. It's a unique place because it's hidden right in the middle of the busy built up area of this town, and it's in the back of a pub. You would not expect it to be there, but it's a lovely little courtyard garden. So let me take you there now. Well, hidden behind this rather unusual facade is a very pretty little garden with things like this Fatsia japonica and this lovely passion flower growing. It's been well tended and looked after, and is a beautiful bed of colour hidden behind this rather unusual fence, and it's being tended by Ali and the locals of her establishment, and is a welcome break. The colours are absolutely wonderful and were much better when I visited last time, because now we're coming to the end of the season, things are fading. However, this garden is going to go through quite a lot of redevelopment over the next 12 months, whilst retaining the pots with things like this hydrangea and also this beautiful little rose. The beds are going to be replaced and enhanced for next year. I think it's going to look absolutely brilliant. That's a really nice place on the south coast, and I'm going to be following the developments of that garden over the next 12 months and the improvements that are going to be made with the new raised beds, and I believe a water feature going in as well. It's going to look very, very different. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And let's just go and show you the work that I'm doing now to extend the woodland border. Well, I've marked out roughly the shape of the extension joining these two borders together, and I've marked that with some canes and some string. And this is the area where the gazebo was, which killed off the grass, which has given me an excuse now to extend the border. Now, I've already put one of the Italian cypresses in over on this corner here, and I did that just before we went away. And I've got the other Italian cypress in a pot, and that's going to go a little bit further down here. And we're going to have a little entranceway between the shrubs that go in here with the two seats at the back. And I'm going to refurbish those seats, and they're going to be an area where we can sit down inside the border. So I've got all of this grass to clear from in here, and then just go over the soil with some nutrients, a bit of fish blood and bone, get the ground nice enough to grow some plants in. So this is an ongoing little job. I'm going to put some hebes in here and a couple of grapevines along the back fence. So the whole thing should be very nice when it's completed. Whilst we're in the working garden, down here I've got some purple sprouting broccoli coming through, and that's going to be a nice winter crop for me, hopefully. And we're still getting some lovely fruits on the cucumber. There's another one on here. We'll just pop this one off. Plenty more on there, so all the time that's giving me fruit, that stays in there. So I think it's about time now to get up into the rose garden, start lifting some of the perennial geraniums that are in there, the hardy English geraniums, lift those to move them where they're spreading so much, and we can move them into the new border. Well, this new border is now taking shape. All the grass is up, I've got the seats being built, and I'm working hard on that. Now, in the rose border, the plants have started to choke the roses, so I'm lifting all of that. And some of these here are the wild geraniums that I have lifted and split and put into the border, and I'm going to carry on lifting those from there and bringing them into the edge here and starting to fill out this border with those. Then I can clean through to give the roses room to grow. They really do need a little bit of help. They've looked absolutely beautiful, but now they're starting to get choked, so we need to actually get that sorted. So I'll show you how we lift our perennials and divide them. Well, this is the plant that I'm going to lift next, and it's got quite a lot of growth on here. Now, when I do move these and get them all into the border, I'm going to remove all of the foliage. That will give the roots a really good opportunity of taking and establishing themselves in the ground. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work the fork around the edges, because I want to get as much of the root out of the ground as possible. And then I'll show you how we divide this. Well, now this plant is lifted, and as you can see, we've got quite a lot of root at the bottom, and there is a lot of new growth coming through. There are probably, I don't know, 10 plants in this, but we're not going to divide it that drastically. I think I'll probably just cut this down into 4 plants, And to do that, I'm going to be quite ruthless just with the spade. So let's do that now. Well, now we've got 3 plants from 1, and these will come out into the edge of this border. Now I've got some potted hebes here which are forming an edging. I've planted some, I've got 2 to plant here. 2 of these will go in between those hebes, and another one is going to go at the top just past the entrance, and that's going to give us a nice edge to this new border. So let's go about planting those now. So once we've decided on the position of our plants, we can then start to put them in the ground. So I'll just lift this out of the way here, and this plant over here, and we'll get a nice area dug here. This soil is actually quite reasonable. The depth of the topsoil is probably around about 7 or 8 inches, but then we do run into some rather nasty clay stuff further down. So we'll get this really dug in there nice and deep. I'm going to open this into a sort of a small trench so I can put the hebe in at the same time as the geranium. Now we're down to the clay, so we'll make a nice break up of that soil down below, which will give the roots a chance to spread well into this. There we are. So first thing we're going to do, a root of something which we don't want. There we go. We'll take the geranium, get this nicely bedded into the ground, and we'll bring the soil in. Right, so I'm going to put that in fairly firmly around the plant. This is going to give it a good chance of taking in here. And then we just take some soil out of here. And we're going to do the same thing now with the hebe in next door. Need a little bit more underneath there. That's lovely. Pop that inside here. And then the edge of the border is starting to take shape along here. I'll plant this one in here, and then the next hebe, and I've got the other geranium to put in at the top. So I better crack on with that. Well, I'm really loving how this border is starting to come together now. So I've got to get my secateurs and just take some of the foliage off of these geraniums. They're just a little bit too much on the large side here. They need to enable the roots to grow rather than the leaves to grow. So I'm going to get that sorted out over the next hour. Now, I did say about the rose border and the problems that I'm having. So I'll just show you very briefly what I'm doing there. Well, the problem we've had here is the self-seeding plants have actually taken over the border. And this is really making these poor little beasties here, my lovely roses, struggle to live. So these are all coming out. We're giving it a good clear through. I will leave some of the forget-me-nots and a little bit of geranium down the front edge here. And the nasturtiums, the seeds will be in the ground. They will come back. But a lot of the naturally seeded things, which some people call weeds, but I think they're quite nice flowers at times, they've all got to come out. We've got to give this a good clean. The geraniums, as you have seen, are being lifted and they're going to be added to the woodland border. And this will enable me then to plant some natural plants that are not going to overwhelm the roses. So I've got a fair bit of work to do here before the autumn and winter really sets in order to get the ground mulched up and nice and ready for next spring. Well, it's a little while since I brought you down to the greenhouse, and for good reason, because a lot of the tomatoes had really nasty blight this year, and I've got a couple of plants left and they're providing some fruit now. And chilies are looking rather resplendent behind here as well, so things aren't all bad. But the main reason that I brought you down here today is I'm going to plant out some sweet pea seeds for next year, and I'm going to get those started off in here, and then we'll move those into the polytunnel. So let's get some of those into some pots. Well, I've prepared 4 pots for my sweet peas. These are just filled with ordinary peat-free compost, and they've been watered about half an hour ago. Now, sweet peas are a reasonably large seed, so all I do is I put a couple per pot. I stick those onto the surface. 1, 2 into there, and 1, 2 into there, and again into the last pot there. And I'll pop these few back into a packet in a minute. Then all I do is I just press those slightly down into the surface and bring the cover back over the top with a little bit of compost, just a little bit deeper maybe than the actual depth of the seed. Now, whilst it's still nice and warm, we may get some germination fairly soon on these, but we don't really want them growing too much until we're going to plant them out next year. Now, I've got my labels all ready for those, so we'll get those labelled up, and once they start to germinate, we'll move those into the polytunnel for the winter. Well, I know that summer is finally over and autumn is here when I start to take the cover off of the gazebo, clean it up and pack it away for autumn and winter, and look forward to being able to bring this back out next spring. So for the last time this year, let's go inside the gazebo and I'll just sum up today's show. Well, that brings me to the end of this little show for October. We've covered quite a lot today. I must say I had a lovely time visiting the garden down at the Clarence in Hastings. And if you're passing through that lovely little seaside town, why not pop in and say hello to Ali and her team, and I'm sure you'll be made very, very welcome. Now, we are making a lot of progress in the garden, and this year has been one of change and one of progress, and I really have enjoyed the year. And this time of the year now, as we're coming into autumn, it really is the time to make sure our beds are clear, are prepared to overwinter and ready for next year, which is why I'm working on that rose border to make sure that the plants have a successful winter. and the new border is going to be a real blessing, and we can sit in amongst the plants next year. And in spring, when the grapevines arrive and we get those planted, that's going to be lovely as well. We're now down to where I wanted to be. The big square of grass has gone, and we now just have grass pathways around the garden, and it's looking great. Down at the bottom, where we have our longer grass for the wild birds, bees, pollinators, and any other little animals and frogs and froglets that come through, that's now had its cut for the autumn, and I only cut it twice a year, once early and once late, and that grows through, and it has some weeds growing through and bits and pieces, but it's natural and it's lovely. So I'm very, very pleased with the way this year has gone. A couple of little jobs I've now got to do around the mini orchard here. I've got to take out those wildflowers that we grew and get those into the compost and get that area ready for overwintering. I've got to do the same with the wildflowers in the front garden. There's a lot of preparation going on now for the overwintering, and as the days get shorter and shorter, and remember this month the clocks go back as well, so the daylight hours are really, really restricted for our work, but we can get out and we can still enjoy ourselves. And so I'm going to be making sure everything I can is done to make sure that this garden is ready to go through winter and then to burst into life in glorious colour next spring. Now I'm going to be back with you in November with one more show, which will show you all of the preparations that I have been doing and that I have done. And then in December we will put together a compilation show from the last 12 months and show you the progress that we have made in the garden in 2021. It's then my intention to take a couple of months off from the broadcast side of things, and so I will not be putting a show out in January or February next year, but I will be coming back and joining you again in March of 2022. And a couple of the reasons that I'm going to be taking the time off is that I'm going to be doing the extension work on the summer house, putting the new roof on, and whilst I will make some recordings of what I'm doing so that I can share it with you, I'm going to be concentrating on that as one main project over the winter, and then I can come back to March and show you exactly what I've been doing, and I think the break will also do me good. So that's about it for this show. I have got a small bottle of wine here, and I'm going to share it with myself today, and it's another one of my favourite Cabernet Shiraz, which is always worth a little sip at. But do remember, stay safe, be kind to each other. Happy gardening. I'll see you in November. Cheers.